Um.
So. David, do you wanna? Where, would you like to start with Scott, your notes?
Sure.
And everyone, you to sort of review some of those. And
People want copies of any of this?
I printed a copy of ours. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll take a copy. I just have it.
We'll make some more.
Yeah.
You got an extra copy of that? Where, anybody else? Look over your shoulder. Oh, okay.
And perhaps we can go page by page item and just go page by page item.
Repeat that again.
Sorry about that. You were on infinite loop there.
Yeah.
Right there.
Technology is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I'm anxious for it to drive me.
Funny, I don't get why it says we're on there 3 times.
I don't wanna drive it, we're in it, honestly. I just wanna, yeah, but I'd
So weird.
be a lot more confident if you could zoom, bring zoom up immediately in this day and age.
So Scott's making a few more copies for people. But these were pieces that he had identified within the report that he had concerns with, so I think we should sort of move through each one of those so that we have a consensus on the recommendation.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. Must have used some blankets too.
They're from Colorado, they were okay.
They had the ski jackets on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alright.
Know you wanna go page by page with this, with the
Yeah,
draft?
Follow this one, but, starting, I mean, it's, the newest one is,
I didn't do.
same numbers, but not same page numbers.
Okay, cause I didn't, I did this on the old one. So.
Oh,
They're
okay.
just page numbers changes, so
Okay. I think we do need to go line by line, Scott. If those are concerns you have, then we should just really be aware of them and then make a choice to
Sure.
give the input to Lisa.
From page 22 on, the section pieces are right, but not the page number.
Yeah.
But you wanna give the direction about 90? I just agreed with that. I just agreed with, page 19.
Yeah, they,
It was probably one of the older copies versus the new one when she fixed the tables. Yeah, I was working on it.
yeah.
So this first one is really the whole paragraph about parking and how that is
So.
I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, it
I
is.
think that any reduction in parking is just not acceptable. At some point in the future, maybe if the Maritime Academy builds a parking garage, we could talk about that, but right now, it's just.
right, but parking is of concern to the community. And I think there should acknowledge that concern, whether we reduce the parking, claim the space. I think these should be either prefaced as responses from the community feedback sessions.
I read through a lot of the feedback, those things with the little circles, and I didn't see much about parking.
No.
So here's my concern on that. Can I show you something? Cause as JT's gonna probably go into also is, we look at this right here, this is 2050. All this right here, 1.5 foot sea level rise means it's underwater. So if we haven't done anything by then, the parking lot's gonna be half inundated anyway, so I think it is something that we gotta be aware of. And I don't think you just knock it out and ignore it, cause it potentially could happen. Because this blue is a 1.5 foot rise in sea level.
So every
with
6
what they-
hours, it'll be flooded.
Yeah, at high tide, cause I believe that might be
Cover the
the,
seaweed every other day.
yeah, and then as long as it's smooth like glass, it won't, maybe it will sit there. Unless we have locked it in or raised
Yeah,
that up, that's what I'm thinking, we gotta raise it up. And then, I don't know if that makes the boat launch go away, so it's right there at the top, so then we have to look at changing that somehow. So I think if we're gonna address those things, we may need to look at losing some parking, even though we don't want to lose it.
But what, you know, what you're talking about, you're losing
Question.
parking to flooding.
Yeah.
Huh?
So you're losing parking to flooding supposedly, and the reality is, that's a 25-year thing or whatever, but
Right,
the 1.5 feet is nowhere near the top of the bulkhead at the worst noon tide, so.
Yeah.
And you're eliminating it permanently, and the
Right.
water eliminates it once every 10 years.
well, I'm not saying like in there, she talks about eliminating like 10 spots or whatever. When we do something with the thing, I'm not saying I'm advocating for that, I'm just saying the reality is we could lose spots. When we have to do
Just
some
during
other
an
things.
event.
Yeah.
Right,
We need a definition of what that constitutes as to when it happens. Is
right,
that the highest of the high tides that will occur during the year?
this, let's
Or
see,
is it the?
this isn't from their
high
study.
tide?
This isn't from their study, just so you know, this is from the main climate impact, but I wanna
But I-
see what 1.5 feet look like, cause I couldn't really make it out on the study. That's one of my suggestions is that they take overheads and they put in, like, what is the average annual high tide in 2025 or whatever that is, in 2050 and 2100 in their report, so you can see what the regular tide is, not even looking at the highest annual tide, and then you also look at whatever the storm surge is. So you'd have several of those rather than trying to put them all on one, so we can better see what's going on, because right now it's very hard to tell. But that's my point, so I prefer not to lose any parking at all, but we don't know what we're gonna have to do there either.
I mean,
Well,
I can understand that during an event, you may lose some parking. but
Yeah.
That event is not green grass and no parking forever.
Right,
So I don't think that, I disagree with you 100% that anything should be done to
Yeah.
eliminate any parking at any time for any reason right now.
well, right now, but that's my point is, so long term, you gotta be a realist in that there could be some changes down there, whether it's swiveling the boat launch or
We
something
can-
else.
We can make that change when it's necessary, but I don't think it's necessary in the next decade.
This is getting exactly to the point that I was talking about. We ought to have a short-term plan and a long-term plan.
Right.
So that short-term plan does exactly what you're saying, doesn't eliminate any parking, only addresses the waterfront and things that will directly apply to the long-term plan. And that's what we do in the next 5 years or whatever it is. Then there's a long-term plan, which coincides with raising the bulkhead, which is gonna have to be done in 20, 25 years, whatever that is. So we decide how much that gets raised, and then that restores all that parking, keeps it up out of the water and out of the flood and out of the storm surge. At that point, hopefully MMA is ready to do the same kind of thing in the neighboring property, so that we're not raising our bulkhead only for our neighbors, not to do anything about theirs. Which means that the whole watershed is treated as a single, space in terms of elevation. And then we can maintain that parking. It doesn't get flooded every 12 hours or 6 hours, whatever it is. And we have a path forward where we don't need to distinguish between the two ideas. There's a short term, we don't do anything. There's a long term, we do everything. And it happens to coincide with everything else that's going on.
I mean,
Okay,
I don't disagree with that. The only thing I disagree with is if we spend any amount of money planning for raising bulkheads or any of that, cheap piles, until everybody on C Street and everybody at the Maritime Academy is on board with the same thing and we're all doing it together, or we're not doing it at all. Because it does no good.
That's exactly.
So
what I'm
let's
saying.
not waste time, money and energy on something that, in my opinion, is just way premature.
And I
think
would
that point
add-
needs to be made, because it doesn't make any sense for only us to do it.
That's the whole trick.
Right.
And why should we be engineering dollars for something that may or may not happen ever? I mean, you just, the Maritime Academy is a big player in this, and they need to be on board with it, and so does the town of Castine on C Street, and
So it is.
it's either all or nothing.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
I think one change in what you're saying is. We don't we aren't necessarily going to raise the bulkhead 25 years from now. We may raise it, but I don't think we wanna say we are gonna raise it. Because we need to see what happens in the next 25 years. And it may be, and you look at that tide chart where the water is, if that's the highest of the high tides that occurs a few times a year for a few hours. To me, it doesn't make any sense to go through a major project.
Yeah.
To keep the parking good for that few days, for that few hours on those few days.
I totally agree. I think if you trust the projections, regardless of what specifically they are, the trend is that it's going to
Yes.
go up, and it's gonna need to happen if we wanna maintain that as town land and not a tidal basin.
Yep.
So the particulars about when it happens or how much it is raised or whatever, that's up for debate, and I agree with you, we don't know when that is, and it probably bears, waiting that out a little bit. But I think the plan and the whole point of the study is about increasing the resiliency. And the idea is we don't do anything until we can do the whole thing at once with our neighbors. So I think we're talking about the same thing, we're going back and forth about little details.
Well, and my concern is that we cannot really remove anything that is apparently the specific feedback captured in these forums.
Yeah.
And so what we need to do is make it more abundantly clear that this is community feedback and not the direction in which the municipality is going.
Right.
And so I'm not sure we can remove this. Because this is statement as, in addition, and specific feedback is captured here, and so this was what was reported from those.
Yeah, it's all a part of the breadth of the conversation.
So we need Lisa to make that as clear as possible in the report, that these are the feedback, and highlight that, so there isn't that miscommunication.
Yeah, I think that's a good comment.
I would only add that the more of that subject that is left in this draft and onto the final report, the more difficult it is to have a conversation in the community about what needs to be done and what is going to be done in the future. And everything that's going to happen is there's so many things in here that don't make sense today to most people in the community, I think. So that if it's an all or nothing thing, nothing's gonna flop. So I don't think we should muddy the waters with things that we, I think, believe are premature.
Well, I think then what we need to do is receive the report and come back with a position from the waterfront or the harbor committee that says these are the salient pieces that need to be addressed. And the others are guidelines and feedback from the community, but these represent the primary issues and the direction in which the fiscal spending of the town.
Yeah, right, parking right here, it says.
To me, what Jay is saying is how they need to develop this report.
Right.
That there is a short term, this is what we're gonna try to do with wave attenuation and all of these things we're doing. And we're gonna pick up the restroom and do something about this but when you start talking about. Raising the elevation of the parking lot and all of this, it's just it's a subject that should be in amongst the things that we know we wanna do now.
That's exactly the point. We have to distinguish between what we're planning on doing in the short term. And then the long term, which could be 25 years from now, 50 years from now, 75 years from now, whatever it is.
I just want to point out that under parking, it says community members feel the existing parking is vital for access to the waterfront businesses. And so I think I agree with.
That's what I read. There was nothing
Yeah.
negative,
Now,
you
it
know.
wasn't like it was a bunch of people saying that they really want to give up parking spaces for other things.
Right.
Like the
Green
parking.
space or whatever, I mean,
Yeah.
so anyhow, so if we go, as we go through these things, I think that there has to be a way to separate the two projects
Mm.
in the report, so that when we begin to, give this report to the community, that they understand clearly from the get-go that this is what we need to do today, in the next 5 years, and this is what we need to really look for as moving forward for 50 years or so, and how that's gonna affect the Maine Maritime Academy, and C Street down at Cassine, but it shouldn't be in amongst all the other things.
I think
That's
too,
just
in
my
that
point.
short term and long, there's short term monitoring too. That may be 10 years, we can decide what that monitoring period is, but how many times does it actually overwash in that 10-year period? So that 25 years out, you can, so the bulkhead comes out, then you make those changes you need to make.
Right.
But the reality is, we're working really hard to protect pavement. Really, what we should be doing is making sure that right now, short term, that water can return without doing damage.
Right.
And you did that at Acadia Dock. You put the cap on, I think that was a wise move. I think that could be extended across as a recommendation for short term. And keep, so that the water returns and doesn't take out the important, and doesn't do damage. So I think on a short term basis, and then monitor, I mean, the information that's in here is 2.4 millimeters per year. Well, I can multiply. And,
So in the near term plan, we need to include the concrete cap on the rest of the bulkhead.
exactly. And some way to articulate that.
And in the long term plan, I would think we'd wanna say things like, these things should be considered.
Yes.
Not that this is what we're gonna do, but these are the items that should be considered in the long term plan.
And considered in conjunction with neighboring property.
Yes.
Yep.
The
Definitely.
only other thing I would say is Castine has a bad habit of wanting to be the first to do all these things. Like we had the first sewer treatment plant that failed miserably until the rest of the world figured out how to do it. Why the hell do we have to be the first one? We don't have to be the first one to worry about flooding either. I mean, but it is, Castine's like that, well, let's do it, and well, don't do it.
Well, the last time it really happened was 1978. And then recently.
Right.
And so, I think that again, you protect the parking lot from washing away
Yes.
and, put on the
And
short term,
do
without
work.
waive and.
Do the work with the buildings that we can control easily.
Yes,
Down the line here, we talk about Habermas's, shack, but we'll do that when we get there.
Yeah, so I think, as these are broken into sections, we could ask Lisa to pull these out even into separate individual
Yes.
reports.
Mhm.
And so there's a report on the community forums.
yes,
Set that aside. This was the community input and response and recording of that response rather. Then we're looking at what they've done for some education pieces. Like there's a lot of material in here about how to retreat, how to build up. I think that's informative and an important education piece, but it's
Adaptation strategies.
strategies, right? But they don't have bearing on what we might have as already a sense of
Yeah.
keeping the infrastructure.
There's a lot of this report that's boilerplate that anybody in the commissions
Go online and you could have written the
gets the same exact.
first third of this and the last third of it.
yeah.
There's a third in the middle that.
But for instance, I'm concerned about section 5.2.4, which is a
You're skipping
recommendation.
that.
I am, jumping, but it's on the topic of parking. And it says, this is where the recommendation is for eliminating parking for green space. Not an option in Castine anytime soon is your response, but when we look at that, which was on, page 32 of the recent report, or 52.4. This is now a recommendation piece. That's what I'm concerned about in terms of your concerns, Scott. Because that's a recommendation, and I don't want the committee in a position where we're ignoring something that is made public, when in fact it doesn't reflect the vast majority of the opinion of this board.
No, I don't think the vast majority of the opinion of the public either, based on what I read.
Agreed.
Yeah, so I think that, and I think any pieces that are in that survey and public response should be woven into either short-term or long-term based on what the opinion is, what the.
So how do we reflect that to Lisa? What do we say to her? In the general adoption adaptation strategies? How do we say, okay, you gotta pull out the things that don't seem viable to us? Do they go in with these, what other harbors have done and what might be a concern based on what Derek's saying in the long term?
It seems like we have fewer options available to us for any of these adaptation strategies. The one that does seem to be able to work, and it has to work with everybody in the area, all neighboring properties, is raising the whole thing. That's kind of the only thing that we have going. The only option that we're not gonna take everything up on posts in the middle of the parking lot. We're not gonna set it back further up the hill. That just doesn't work.
Yeah.
We have to allow protection of basically of what we have in some form. And maybe that form changes a little bit depending on, what's available to us, what kind of money we can spend, what kind of ideas we have, what the state allows us to do in terms of permitting and, covering areas with wharf instead of parking lot. There are ways to expand this that are, Lisa said, were sort of viable, right? To maybe make an argument for treating this as a waterfront function and being able to expand the amount of space that we have to walk around outside of the parking lot. It's on a wharf above the water. That seems like it might be a viable thing to look into. I mean, there's different, variations of what that actually defines. But I think it's all a variation on the theme of maintaining what we have when we need to raise it to a point where it's hardened and protected and not vulnerable to flooding anymore in conjunction with surrounding properties. Then that's sort of the approach we take. It's a lot of these things, sure, they're great ideas and maybe apply to somebody someplace, but not here. So I don't know how much of that we can, sort of get.
From the whole report's supposed to be short-term and long-term. Otherwise, why did we bother to do the study?
Right.
We could have just looked at like Dave's layout of like the dock expansion, which is separate, versus the whole idea was how will we address or have ideas to address being more resilient and armoring that area so that future generations can use it also. Or do we just let it go back to the ocean and we abandon it? That's not what anybody wants. So ignoring the fact we gotta do something in 25 years or potentially and not having it in the report is a problem. But I agree, when it says we could consider whatever in that parking area, that could be something that you pull out. I mean, it's
I don't think.
obvious.
I don't think anybody's trying to pull anything
Yeah,
out. I
right.
think we're trying to make it into two reports, basically, one short-term, one long-term. It will make it an easier read for everybody if they understand that what we're doing today is gonna get us through until we get to the point where we're gonna have to go into the long-term plan,
So-
spend a copious amount of money. Whereas right now, for substantially less money, if we can put up the waiver continuation,
Yes.
that's gonna help us out in the parking lot, it's gonna help us out with washouts and everything.
Yeah.
And it'll be there in the future plan too,
I agree.
so.
So
You
here's the
keep it
thing,
separate.
on that chart is the chart, right? Well, for one thing, I think perhaps a couple of these recommendations like 5.2.5, 5.2, maybe she can put. Short term, but but then the long term stuff in that same paragraph as another portion of it. So people understand the two, but then you get into that table that is 5.1. And then it starts listing intermediate, 0 to 2 years, 2 to 10 years, short term. It starts, and then long term, boat ramp, consider alternative locations, Acadia Pier. If we're gonna lift the bulkhead up, then of course, we're gonna have to lift up those docks to be level with them. Otherwise, we're gonna have to ramp down a ways to get up to those higher elevations. But I think so, and then like, I agree with you, the Harbor Master Shack, I think should probably stay on Acadia Dock right near there. But in the future, it'll probably be up higher, because Acadia Dock will be up higher when we replace those.
Go with
two
it,
piles.
right now,
Right.
seriously, not as a joke, I'd put wheels on it.
Yeah,
It's not that big a deal, it's cheaper than building a new one over on the other side of the parking lot, which they can't see the docks close to the mooring.
Move it.
So we just,
Yeah.
roll it out, if we know there's a storm coming in a half an hour, you can put it over in someplace safe.
You suggested that with the restaurant, then. Similar idea, or.
Well,
The only problem
food
with the
trucks.
restaurant thing is it doesn't have a floor, so it's a much bigger project.
Oh, no floor.
It's a concrete floor.
originally it was on wheels, right?
Yeah.
So,
and those,
Gives me the eye to hit it.
yeah.
and those are the things I think are important also to consider in the report is. How many times does that restaurant get wiped out, and how many times do we continually throw money in it? Or do we say, okay, wait, in the long or intermediate plan, it talks about moving that off there. Maybe we need to move it out, or maybe we need to remove it altogether, or whatever that solution is something that all belongs as part of the plan, Because we can't just ignore it, because there's one thing I've often said, geez, how many times are we gonna rebuild hurricane ravaged lands in Florida that just keep bang, bang every 5 or 10 years. Some point you go, you know what, Mother Nature's winning the battle. Maybe people aren't supposed to be there anymore. I don't wanna move off the dock. I wanna make sure it's still there for like generations to come.
The rest of the eatery down on the town dock.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
It would make sense to me to do the same thing that Dennett's Wharf did this summer. They've got a container that's 20 foot long by 8 by 8 and has the kitchen in it. And if you have wheels on it, the end of the season, park it out at the dump. Out of harm's way. Cause it's probably gonna be more than 50 years before the dump floods.
I hope it never gets to that point.
So,
We're in big trouble.
Yeah, the big problem would be getting over to that point from here, but.
is it more effective for us to go through this table than to start pulling the things out and give that to Lisa as feedback?
I think that's one of the spots you definitely wanna concentrate on, and of course, here's another table, I think there's two tables, that's an important table of this report. And the other important table, okay, is, let me just look. I don't know if I wrote it down, is on page, it's 3.3, flood risk results, right? So that one there actually shows us like present day highest annual tide, and then gives you these timelines, like if sea level goes to that part, if it continues at 1.5 millimeters a year, you start seeing like in 2050, the boat ramp is 1.7, the top of it, I believe, 1.7 feet underwater. And as you stretch out, you start seeing where these things start becoming underwater at highest annual tide, or during the sea swell stuff is the other one, which is storm surge. So that's part of, I think, the other table that, to me, I found the most value on. I wish they had pictures of the the water on the overlay picture of the town dock where you can actually see what that means. Okay, here's, the one thing's missing is just average high tides. I would love to see what the average high tides look like on those, during those time frames. Because that would be telling, because we don't know. Was that thing I put up there, was that highest annual tide with storm surge, or was that just highest annual tide, which we know will be a few times a year? But what is the other tide? Like, what is, you guys know more than I do on that. What's the difference between the highest annual tide and the average tide?
Probably, 2 or 3 feet.
2 or 3 feet, yeah, okay. Yeah, all right. So see, that's important to kind of know too. Okay, what are we dealing with on that?
Yep.
And as a layperson reading it, that should almost be spelled out so they understand that when they're looking at a picture. Because if I'm looking at something, I'd rather look at a picture, aerial photo with these little lines on it, and it says this right here is the average tide line, high tide. This is highest annual tide. This is storm surge, whatever, and then you can go, oh. And that's in 2025, that's in 2050, 2075, or 2100, which we will never live to see, probably. I'm guessing I'm not gonna be around 2070 either, but still, it'd be good to see that.
Well, I think communicating those pieces, Derek, are going to be very valuable because I think those images are important for people to understand.
Yeah.
So that is a good recommendation to look at. Is there, Scott, as we keep moving through here, things that are, you wanna highlight?
Well, I mean, these are things, some of them are just, blatant errors and, the talking about raising the parking time from 2 hours to something more, and it's already 4 hours everywhere but the bulkhead. So that, that didn't get in there. Relocating the launch ramp, certainly not an option in the near future, and when it becomes an option, it's gonna be something that's part of a major big project to do. Maybe Maritime Academy and all of that, because the launch ramp is fine. And until we start filling things in.
Yeah.
Prior to that, it's fine, we don't need to worry about that, and that, the filling thing is not something that's imminent. I think, 5.122 was better solution than section 5.123. And that was the wet flooding rather than abandoning lower, all they were doing was wet flooding the doorways and making sure that very little, if any, water got through the man doors. Benta Hartman's overhead doors, I don't know what you'd ever do with that, but I'm sure somebody has figured that out. And they could probably figure out a way to get that up 3 feet, so it stops them going in. But that's what they call wet flood proofing, and that's a better solution than anything they said previous to that. In my opinion.
The, relocating the launch ramp, the real problem isn't the location of the launch ramp. The real problem is the lack of parking for trailers.
I don't know where you'd ever get that.
Um,
You could park it on the green
I don't
space.
have the solution, I'm just identifying the problem.
Right.
The launch ramp works.
Yeah,
The real problem with it is, there's no place to park.
Yeah, and that's already
About,
determined in the long-term pieces, the alternative location or associated trailer parking, those are out there in this table as long-term pieces.
and some of the other obvious things, talk about raising the sheet pile and then raising the earth. And the elevation of the parking and everything, but it doesn't talk about it in a way that it only gets done until everybody's gonna do it. I mean, there's just. If somebody reads that and thinks, well, they're gonna do that now, I mean, it's wrong, it should be set up in a way in the report where. When maybe Maritime Academy, Town of Castine, the C Street, and everybody gets together to do that project, that's when you talk about it. Before then, it's a waste of time, money and energy.
So we wanna emphasize that it needs to be community and neighbor.
Absolutely.
Before the decision is
It's an
made.
all or nothing thing. And putting it in this report as if it's something you could do, makes no sense.
I agree.
And then I talked about the present, the location of the harbor master's office is so much more superior than moving it over to the restrooms. Because of their proximity to the floats, docks, mooring field, process, I mean, you're not gonna see any of that over there. So to me, it's like put wheels on it and do whatever you wanna do, but don't move it.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things in the report where they talk about, staging the area with barricades and all of these things that you have down there available to put up at the time you need them. Castine Fire Rescue Department takes care of that in a swimmingly beautiful way, and they're on, spot on to do it. And you're not having the town crew go down there and put up barricades and stuff, they have a truck full of that stuff. And they can be there in minutes and do what they do, they've been doing it for years. You know, they do it all over the place, not just for that event, but that's what they do. And then they also talked about in the report about some way, of notifying people. Well, we have that way, we have push notifications, we have all the online services that Sue takes care of, and announcements, and so places in there where they bring that up when they should have already known that's in place.
Yeah.
This is the whole thing that was a little annoying to me, is they keep bringing up these things and they're wrong. And it just, it shouldn't be that way, and I would hope that that type of thing gets cleaned up with final
Well,
report.
we are the accountability piece right now,
Okay.
so that's what we need
That's
to
what we're
do
doing.
and
Yeah.
try to.
Those are really the major
Okay.
things they talked about, was changing the zoning. Well, we don't need to change our zoning. It's already state DEP. That they just did in 23, and we can, but it's a monumental task to change the zoning in Castine when DEP, you know, you gotta live by those rules if you're in Castine or anywhere else. So I don't think we need to change our shoreline zoning right now.
Well, and to change it, we can only change it in a more, we can only make it more restrictive.
More restrictive, right?
Yeah.
So you're not gonna, well, you could, but I doubt you're gonna do that.
I don't think you can, I don't think that.
That's a tricky one. I think, water dependent, you can do certain things around there, so if you consider it that. But it's not an easy thing to do, so cause I know I ran into that on a lake anyways. Cause I was like, how come they're able to do this in Augusta or whatever down there? It's cause it was water dependent and the development had already grown to that point. But I don't think they're gonna let you encroach in with like structures and stuff like that. So,
You know, just to summarize, our job really is to figure out a way to present this to Lisa where she knows what we're looking for a report and how it's laid out. You know, and so that it's clear to the public when they're reading it that, no, we're not gonna fill the parking lot next week. That's something that.
Would it be helpful to have Lisa here for a discussion like this?
Well,
I think when-
only once we've started to identify
I think,
particular, she doesn't need to sit here and listen to us discuss the nitty gritty of it, but we need to be able to bullet point for her that this needs to be itemized.
Yeah.
And I
agree.
So who's gonna do that?
But if she's here in the middle of some of our discussions, she'll better understand what we're really trying to accomplish, where if you just give her a list of things to change.
Well, I
she
think
does-
it would be wise to have her when we present the list.
Yeah,
The fine.
so we could explain each one and what we're
Yeah.
getting at, yeah.
And we need to come out with a list or an action to create the list at the end of this meeting. So that we have it and then can schedule with her.
When is she expecting us to give her recommendations?
Well, we were going to complete this task by the end of this week.
Okay.
I'm making my own list of near-term things that need to be done, which I'll give you when we're done.
You're going to give those to me?
Say that again.
David, I can work with you on that because I was thinking of I was hoping to get further than I got on it, but I was thinking of putting together two graphic plans. One of the short term and one of the long term. And I think in order to do that, the short term plan will have all the things that you're talking about. So that can show up just like this with a bunch of notes and, I think that would be really helpful and really clear. The long-term plan is a little bit more complicated because we don't really know what it is. Maybe we can have a conversation about that, what that should include. So we have a set of bullet points for the short term and a set of bullet points for the long term that we can include in some sort of plan that can be included in this report. We can have her, do whatever they're gonna do to it over 2 different time periods.
Can I ask you to also itemize kind of the image requests that Derek has? The near term coastal sea level rise or average
Do
tide.
we have examples of that?
Well, in the report, they have the one that does the floodplain mapping on whatever that figure is on, let me find it. Oh, I got Dave's and
Some of those,
You know, where-
way too much information on one page.
I agree.
yeah, that's what I'm saying is, so it'd be so much easier to separate this thing
This
into.
one, Derek,
And. if you-
Yes, so that one there, kind of to have those all separate, so that they have those different horizon now. 2025, not 20, that is now, 2050, 2070, I think it is, and then 2100. If you had those saying, okay, here's the average high tide, here's the high
yeah. this is-
average tide, and then storm surge in, and you had 4 of those like that, that would be 100% better, because everybody would know what they're looking at, and they would know what is gonna be underwater, and maybe onto the right, how far underwater things might be, or how far back does that go? So like at Danny Murphy's, is it looking at their front door, or is it 10 feet away, well, you'll be able to tell that, but you know what I mean, if it's right at the door, I wanna know, is that a foot of water, is that, 2 inches of water?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
pulling out the layers from
Yeah.
that flooding
Yeah.
in
The
nation.
idea that we're having trouble interpreting what those
Right.
graphics mean. People who aren't at all familiar with it,
Well, the other part of that
And
is
we
the
gotta
worst scenario, that's worst
Right,
case scenario,
right.
they've got part.
There's a contingent of people who think that this sea level rise is gonna ease, not gonna go away,
Yeah.
but it's gonna be less 10 years from now, less 20 years from now, there'll be improvements, I think.
Well, there's no crystal ball and,
Right.
all we can do is, but also I think too, it happened in 1978 and it happened, last year or the year before, whatever it was. And
Right.
so it's not like it's a routine event.
Could be a
Right.
cyclical.
And so I think it's equally as hard to predict a storm surge as it is, whether you're gonna have a 13-foot 2 tide. And so, I think that has to be spelled out too, it's the worst case scenario. And how much do you wanna spend in order to deal with a worst case scenario where potentially looking at your map, the worst case scenario, is very similar to what we just dealt with.
Right,
And so what would have been about better way or had the town dock been new, it wouldn't have washed away, first and foremost, it would have been solid enough to withstand it. And 2, you always make sure that any storm water can return to the sea. That's the number 1 problem, isn't it, David? Where, I know he agrees with me, I've already talked to him about this, if you have, the weight of that water coming back to the sea, that's when the damage occurs. And so what you do is you make sure that you don't restrict it.
right,
Yeah, so, and we've been working at
and
that.
raising the bulkhead
Will restrict
is
it.
gonna restrict the flow,
Yes,
which is going to put additional forces on them.
yeah.
And it's better
Let it go.
probably to not have any restrictions
Yes.
as to where the water can go.
I
I
think,
agree, I just think that's.
I think that when we talk about raising the bulkhead, we're also talking about raising the parking lot. I don't think we're talking about raising the bulkhead only. That's my
And
understanding.
Yeah.
that's a long term
Yeah.
piece.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I still think if we do that, we add an additional catch basin someplace too. And we look at the drainage to make sure it's able to escape through that way too. You know, right now, I think I think that, no, there's two down there, I think, but one of them's further down. Is the one under Acadia. Where is the other one?
I don't know,
The other storm drain, there's the one under Acadia, and then
I don't think there is one.
It's between Acadia and Dennett's.
that's where the other one, okay. And that, oh yeah, that drains
Yeah.
from, right,
And
so,
that
and I don't
drains-
know, MMA must have one down on their part, maybe, yeah,
Yeah.
Just under Andrews there.
yeah. Yeah,
I don't mean to, just, that storm drain thing is one reason I was wanted to come here, but Scotty, that drain between Dennett's and
Mhm.
Smith's is what happens up at is your drain, storm drain, right?
Well, not mine, but I know what you're
but
trying to say.
that's that
Comes out of
storm
that,
drain.
that's part of it.
area.
So the reports.
Well, that takes up a Water Street and a bunch of other stuff too.
So the report said to put some backwash things on the,
Well, that was one of my questions,
Oh, the baffles.
if these backflow preventers, if they work when they're normally submerged? I don't see how.
I don't know how they could, I think
The
that'd be
backflow
good.
preventer is gonna
I think
work
really
with a
not.
difference in pressure.
Yeah.
If the pressure is higher up on the upstream side of the check, let's call it a check valve.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
That's what it is.
It'll open. If the pressure is higher on the outside, then it's gonna close.
Right,
And one thing that probably should think about is if we're gonna raise the parking lot, the bulkhead and everything else in there, it would make a lot of sense to contour the parking lot such that the natural flow is down the launch ramp. And if we contour it that way, then we don't need any underground drainage. Let it all drain on the surface.
Yeah.
well, I'm guessing I'm thinking that one doesn't just do that, I'm thinking that does some water coming down Main Street too, but I don't know.
Yeah. But if all of that,
Right.
if the parking lot is contoured so that the water all eventually flows down the launch ramp. We're just launching water, running
Eliminates
boats.
water, right, yeah. Yeah, 'cause that's what I was thinking
All
is,
those catch basins on
that's
this
a-
are right in
for that to-
house.
open, it's gonna be at low tide, or there's gonna be enough water pushing down to open it to
If
get
it's a
out.
low tide, we're
I
not
don't
worried
think-
about flooding, are we?
Well, I know, I think the idea was that the water would rush in and come up through, and there is what when I read it.
Oh, I agree, that's what you
Yeah.
think, but I mean, I don't see how it works if, because the pressure of
Any,
4 feet of ocean is gonna be way more than what coming down.
Right, and of
Right,
course, the
and
way
it's
that,
closed at
Right,
that.
and it's
Right.
closed at that point, so it just
So,
doesn't make sense.
yeah.
any kind of check valve that you put in is a mechanical device.
Yeah.
It's gonna require maintenance
Yeah.
and it's gonna not work properly at the wrong time.
That would never happen, Castine.
Murphy's
Oh,
law.
okay. Then I take that back.
Yeah, we dare.
Hey,
Against it.
speaking of like I know what this would be long term, but the bulkhead. Do they make other materials that are more rust proof, have a longer life and stuff like that than just like whatever that is, like iron down there or
Yeah.
whatever? So therefore it lasts longer and doesn't slowly rust away? Or no?
Well, nothing that probably has a proven record like regular steel.
Right, okay, well, that's what I wasn't
Maybe
sure,
in
like if
50
they had.
years' time.
Right,
We'll
yeah.
have some, materials that
Well-
have proven themselves, but steel is the cheapest right now, it's the easiest to maintain. And it's probably the easiest to drive, because at some point you're putting pressures to drive everything
Right,
down.
right, exactly.
So are you gonna do a study on that sheet pile with the idea to have an engineer report?
Well, that's
We'll
certainly
get to
in
that.
the report here as being part of it. David, is really very confident that we've assessed it.
Yeah, he ought to engage the whole thing.
We did, yeah.
I mean, I think those places that we drilled were very telling, I mean, they were hardly any worn
Yeah.
at all.
But I also think that we have not maintained, we are deferring maintenance, we haven't gotten the coating on there, the zincs are at their absolute end. So we are at a
Short
point
term.
that if, in the short term. To build a long-term plan, then maybe we need some of that assessment beyond. Or we need the people to do the maintenance, and these become priorities to avoid the failure that is the deferred maintenance.
So is there a coating that's due? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it's overdue.
And what's the material they use? What is it? Like a tar type thing?
Well, there's a number of them, but the coal pot,
Oh, yeah.
tar is often used.
Yeah, and now they have a lot of good coatings that are water almost compatible, so they can be wet, and it doesn't have to.
So to me, it would sound like what's below the water would be more of a concern anyway. How much of that's gonna be rusted out? If anything,
Well, in our evaluation, it's all in very good shape.
even what's piled, how far down is it
The
piled?
rust is at the top in the intertidal zone, and what's down below has proven to be in fairly good shape.
But I was
And
talking
very
about-
hard.
It doesn't get any oxygen.
Yeah.
No rust.
The splash zone
Splash.
is where you're gonna get your most corrosion, and that's at the top of the bulkhead.
Yeah.
The bottom of the bulkhead, many bulkheads rust out right at the mud line there. But our bulkheads does not seem to be doing that. And the anodes will give a lot of protection to the bulkhead. The coating isn't anywhere near as effective as the anodes. And the coating is probably a lot more expensive to do than keeping the anodes replaced. And no matter what we do, we can't coat the inside of the bulkhead. So that's subject to corrosion, but having the anodes there to make it so that your corrosion cell is protecting the steel rather than eating it away.
And we need to, when those anodes are installed, we need to understand the electrical conductivity and connection that is made, because they're not going to do anything if they're just bolted on and not electrically
Gotta be
connected.
grounded, right?
The fact that they have wasted away
Yes.
is an indication they're working.
Yes.
Yeah,
They're all going on the 17th.
okay.
Greg couldn't get over there. Kenny got him tied up way too long.
That's
And if you did it 4 hours with Kenny, you're exhausted.
So we
Yeah,
do
hey,
have,
you got a line on those? Did you talk to the people too?
we have a
No,
pilot,
Karen is gonna get them, I think. She may have already ordered them.
Using aluminum or zinc?
they're aluminum,
Aluminum.
and I thought we had a bunch,
We don't have enough.
no,
We're
okay,
short several.
okay.
Which I don't know why, cause I know, I'm pretty sure when there were like 30 or 40 out there, but they're down to 20 or 18.
Uh-huh.
Well, in 2019, we ordered 22, I think, on
Right.
that invoice, so. And I don't know how many we used, but I don't know how many we might have had,
In
the
general,
old ones too, or
for the most
whatever.
part, we change them all at once.
Yeah.
When you see one that's bad, then they're all most likely bad.
Yeah,
And I think they're all bolted on. right?
They are.
And so it's an easy job changing them.
Yeah.
But we go a year without the anodes working, we
Yeah.
probably cutting a few years off the life of the bulkhead.
I don't think we've been there yet, though. They're still working.
Yeah,
They're, they're not what they were, but they're still something besides that metal bar.
as long as there is still,
There is.
Metal.
I've not seen anything down there to indicate there is aluminum left on that bar.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
So,
So, can't regenerate, I mean, the short term list is gonna be a lot easier than long term, I think, so. I mean, we've pretty much got it, you know, you waive attenuation and you want some new dinghy flows and you want a plan, the part of the short term plan is to plan the long term plan.
I think the
More easily quantified.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Right.
The long-term plan is more aspirational.
Yeah.
It's more about, what do we want this to be? What, you know, are there a lot of variables to that, or is it just taking what we have, protecting it, raising it up however much we need to in conjunction with the other properties, and is that the end of it? Maybe it is. Maybe that's what we put forth as the,
all you can do is the best you can, cause you have no idea what's gonna be available in 50 years.
Right.
You know, and it may be some miracle thing that's like, oh my God, why didn't we think of that, you know, I mean. So just don't be the first one out of the box, do it.
But that,
Like-
I don't think that lets us off the hook for not having a
Oh,
long.
no, I agree, but.
It could be,
It
sure,
has
and
to
the
be-
long-term plan might
Yeah.
change, but
And it changes.
An example of the changing technology, reinforced concrete, steel rebar. That's what really destroys concrete because it starts to rust and then the rust expands and stuff. They now are starting to use fiberglass rods
Yeah.
that don't rust. And that should make reinforced concrete in the ocean environment last a whole lot longer.
They got the coated ones, they've had that for years, but now they're getting.
Yep, but
Yeah.
the coatings,
Oxy could.
the coatings,
That's what.
Oh, I know, I
Gradually
mean,
give up.
it's been a step,
yes,
you know.
and 25 years from now, a steel bulkhead may not be the right thing to do.
Yeah, a bottom of some kind, yeah.
But we know we're gonna have a failing bulkhead at some point, and we gotta do something about it.
Right.
No, this one's gonna go.
Yeah. Can I ask a question? Are we gonna get to the floating breakwater story? Cause I'm just saying that's expensive and it's involved, and maybe we need a specialist
I
to go
think
into
we
that.
should get GZA involved immediately. At least to the point where we can get the information that they have and see
Yeah.
how that fits what we have.
I think to put it on this plan and indicate it, it's the thing, whatever it is, whoever designs it, whatever it's made out of and however it gets installed. Ought to happen sooner than later. That should be part of the short-term plan. All we have to do is put a lump on the drawing and say wave attenuation.
Mhm.
And then people understand that we're gonna do something about that, and we don't understand everything about it, we don't understand what it's gonna be, but. The idea is that we want one, and we want it sooner, and that seems like a sound investment, because it's going to, exactly.
And we want it to
Have
be
you ever talked to
integrated into the
Crystal Floats
expansion
to
of the
see if they
digging
do it?
dock.
Cause I didn't call today, I didn't get
It
to it.
expands the flow, makes the harbor better.
I'm not aware of them doing anything with floating breakwaters. I found one company, SF Marine Systems or something, that, has the kind of floating breakwater that I think we need. And I've specified that it would be 16 feet wide, and that's a function of the wave regime that we might get. And we've got about 1.5 miles maximum fetch. And so the maximum wave height that we're gonna get is probably only 3 feet,
I was gonna say.
something like that, in a period of maybe 3 or 4 seconds. And I think that's consistent with what I saw, in the storms. And as such, we don't have to have anywhere near the breakwater that the Maritime Academy is using. And if we use anchors as opposed to piling, the surface of the breakwater is much more useful as a floating dock. And it's a whole lot cheaper to put anchors out than it is to put pilings at the depth that we're gonna be. If we go out 60 feet, we're gonna be, we probably need 50-foot pilings.
Yeah.
And we just,
Does that company that you, does that company do a design build?
yes, that's what I've read in their, website.
So then maybe GZA is not the answer.
And it's, I can find it, I think.
There's more maintenance, we do it that way, right? With anchors and chains, we have to replace those chains every so often. It still might be the best solution.
Well, it may be the way to get it in, you can always move to pilings later. And so if you if you all of a sudden fell off, if you.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, if you're feeling rich, we
Yeah.
go ahead with it.
Well, I mean,
Don't talk-
we're not gonna be-
But
we're not gonna be able to pay for any of this ourselves, right?
Okay.
It's all gonna be
This
dependent
is-
on what kind of grants we.
This is the SF Marina System,
I do think it's.
and
it's
they've
got
got,
a lot of what we've been
some,
talking about.
Yeah.
For the.
things that we've done in different places.
And
This
that's
one-
time to,
So how are we going to convey all
Connecticut
this?
Marine
I know,
This time of year right now is.
is a 16-foot wide, 168-foot.
Yeah,
That's
We need.
in a
somehow to do it.
similar,
Yeah.
kind of
But
wave regime that we might have.
Derek,
Yeah,
And
I'm
we want
listening
them
to
to
you.
there's someone who can
Yes,
assist
but I
in
don't,
compiling all this people.
I think
Maybe
that
they
we're
won't
gonna
come
have
up
to have
on
another
that.
one of these powwows, right? I'll see if Ina's kicking around, she's pretty good at keeping notes and stuff. And
You contacted
I'll
them,
see if
did
she's
you, or-
available,
No, I
we're
just
gonna
looked at
meet
their
on,
website.
I don't
What
know,
was it?
Thursday
That-
this week, when, do you know? I thought nobody was available on Thursday this week.
The end of the week is
And
almost impossible.
if you look at it, this is a,
So
so
we
we
might have to
concrete.
push it off for another week.
And we need to talk to Lisa about that
if you
too.
look it up on your
I don't think
computer,
there's a problem with it.
there's a lot.
This is
No, I-
our timeline.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the only person might have a problem is the state, cause they were supposed to be done with this like
I
in
will do
August,
that.
right? But I haven't heard anything from them and I've been meaning to call and say, look, we're a little bit behind cause of staffing and everything else. So I'm thinking she's now in a holding pattern, probably catching up on some other stuff she's doing until we get back with these things, so.
But
I'll
they've
check.
they've got, project.
So we might need to do a housing
that they're
committee
showing
meeting or
at,
something else.
Depending
Not
on
very
your progress.
Newport, down in Newport, Rhode Island.
We're gonna be so much
Uh,
closer to
down
that
Rhode Island
than
and
part
a few
of
other
what
places.
Scott
I think
had.
they're located down in
Yeah.
Virginia.
And then, I mean, I think this is right at it. I don't think we need to see
Maybe
anything
the town
like
would
this.
No.
Maybe
Pay us
it
for
would
per
reflect
diem to go down and look at that.
this one.
Yeah,
Once the weather.
I think she did that because she was thinking about trying to incorporate those changes, and she mentioned it at one of our meetings, like, oh yeah, well, so people can just see possibilities or whatever. But I think maybe. You throw,
I think
this new
using
date,
this as a way to describe to people what.
Right,
What we're
what,
trying to do.
right,
that's sort of mitigating.
right,
And then the report and all the information in the report sort of supports the conclusion that we've come to. And that seems to be a good, clean way to communicate all that. Yeah.
JT?
Yeah.
Are you planning to take this and pretty it up and put it in?
I'm gonna do something similar to what I did, remember all those
Mhm.
versions
Yeah,
of the
Yeah.
quotes and everything, I'm planning to do something similar to that. But
If you,
but
if you
sending it
take
to-
my drawing and
Yeah,
put it on the computer, make it look pretty,
no problem.
I think that would be
I
a
do
good
think,
step.
I do think that we don't have to worry so much about absolute specificity. We need to include the bubble diagram of what all these things are.
I think that specificity will cause a little bit of, you know,
It's good to leave it a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah, I do, I think. it's-
Until we then have a planning document that says this is where we're going.
Right.
And we're not going to have that until we see what has been developed
Right,
already.
yeah. Yeah, I do think we have a tendency to get hung up on the details of how we do this and that. I don't think that's important for this, for what we're talking about. We need the big picture idea of what it is we're trying to accomplish, short term, long term, and that's how we convey to the town, like what's coming out of this report. I think that's gonna be the clearest way. And then this plan, this rainbow plan, is, we just wanna separate it out into 4 different plans, each with its, increasing amount of flood. And we wanna look at the highest annual tide only in each of those.
no, I think we do average, like high tide.
Okay,
Highest annual tide and then storm surge on those would be good, cause that
For
shows you the
each-
3, right, for each one, cause that shows you what we're looking at.
got it.
Cause the worst thing we do is say, oh, let's move something back a little ways, and all of a sudden we find out, well, it's just gonna be useless in 15
Is there
years.
a way to predict storm
Storm
surge?
surge, yeah, it's just.
Yeah,
Is there a
they
way to
usually,
predict
they
storm
do
surge?
something with it, I've seen it.
Yeah, sure. If you know what the water height's gonna be a function of the tide level, which is moon, sun, etc. It also is a function of atmospheric pressure. For every inch of mercury, you get a foot of water elevation. And with ribbon, you get rise in the water. So if the wind is blowing from the southwest, which is gonna put, and like with a hurricane, and for a prolonged period of time, pushes a lot of water into Penobscot Bay, that's gonna come into the Bagaloos River. And if that hurricane comes and it's a particularly low pressure as it goes over, if that coincides with the astronomically higher tides, et cetera, that's when you get what happened 2.5 years ago and in 78. But you've got to have all of those variables all come together at once to have what happened. And so we had one event almost 50 years ago and another one a year or so ago. And with the rising sea level, we may well see the next one in 25 years. But and it's just a percentage.
Right, and that's
Because-
what they're 1 in 100
Right.
years, basically.
And storm surge is the number one thing that kills and damages stuff is the storm surge, because it's that repeated hammering. On stuff that isn't used to getting hammered.
Yeah, the storm surge, which is raising the level of the water, that's not the issue really.
Right,
It's the wind-driven waves
right,
that hammer things. That's,
right.
the wind-driven
Drives
waves
it further.
is what,
Right.
combined with a buoyant force on the town pier, is what destroyed it. And the floating breakwater will significantly reduce the wave action that's coming in to try and destroy things.
Right,
Is that why you wanted it 60 feet? Is that why you put
Say
it,
again?
is that why you put it at 60 feet? Or I think that would,
No, I put it at 60 feet to make it consistent with the Maritime Academy's thing. And to provide enough room so that we could have dinghies and larger boats on both sides of the floating breakwater.
on both sides.
And 60 feet is not a magic, we could move it out to 70 or 80. But I think we do need to make sure that we've got a reasonable lane for traffic to go into the Maritime Academy Basin. And the further out it is, the easier it is gonna be to
Give that space.
get in and out of it. But in order to really make any big, if you look at where the new ship pier is, and you put the ship on that, we'd have to put our floating breakwater out to not have a hindrance with docking there, couple of 100 feet. And that's not reasonable.
can I ask something? Is 60 feet enough for people like somebody that, remember when we had lunch down there that day and the guy was struggling? Is that enough room for somebody like that to be playing around in such a small area?
No,
Not
No,
necessarily, no,
Well, no, that boat was
30 feet.
Pretty
at
long.
least.
I know,
That,
Right.
so you would have been.
so you would have been,
he was in
so,
there will
How-
always be somebody who can get in trouble.
right,
Yeah.
And I can tell you one person who got in trouble in the Maritime Academy Basin many years ago. And it was when the pier that's there was actually in much closer. And some young guy who didn't have as much boating experience as he thought, got in an outgoing tide,
Yeah.
really strong one, got the launch sideways and ended up against the pier. That was me.
A lot of sailboats off the bow.
Oh, back when they went all the way ashore, it was constant.
Yes,
So those little old sailboats, they didn't have a motor big enough to do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yanked a lot of them off.
Which, you know, down the road may mean that we have, more dock attendants. You know.
Yeah.
and you gotta come out to people, you need to
Well,
like
we have to
pilot the
have-
boats in,
Communication,
yeah.
meaning that if you intend to come to Castine, you need to let us know the size of your boat and we'll give you the spot where you're tying up.
Yeah,
If it's going to be a
That's what they do
hazard.
in
to get in.
Belfast.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you can tie up long enough to get up to the harbor master and find out where you're supposed to.
Yeah. So then we need to look a potential another meeting date this week? Is that what you were
If you
suggesting?
can think it, if
I don't-
people can make it, I don't know, didn't sound,
I don't.
didn't
think
sound
this
hopeful.
week, no. This week.
So I guess we'll have to do next week and, next week, I gotta
Does that? put-
BOS, oh, actually, next
Yeah,
week,
version, they put it on.
Oh,
We
okay.
need.
I didn't know that, I thought that was a.
next week, we shouldn't have a select board meeting, so Monday could be an option. Planning board meets at maybe, I think they may be having a meeting, but I don't know, at 4. So that doesn't matter, nobody in here is on planning board, right? So we could do it on Tuesday. Yeah, is that really October already? Great.
Tuesday would work for me, Monday would.
Yeah, Thursday is open. But we have early in the week in case we need a potential other.
Yeah, next week is really a
Right.
challenge for me in addition to this week.
Yeah.
These next 2 weeks are very difficult, but Tuesday would be, if we need to, the time I could meet in addition to David.
What's everybody else looking at?
So we're looking at the
5.
30th?
5 o'clock,
Yeah,
yeah.
5 o'clock.
Yeah, both of those are good for me right now.
Yeah.
Well, let's say Tuesday, 5 o'clock. And there's no other scheduled meeting in here, Derek, that you know?
Well, 4 o'clock is planning board. I don't think they'll be that long, but if we have to, we'll have to pivot downstairs.
Okay.
If they go long, but they generally have not been going very long. And I have not seen anything on there yet. Oh, wait, what is next week?
That's my
The
list.
30. Oh, actually, so I think they have 1 or 2 things on their agenda.
You can.
Cause that's right,
I
that's
was
the
gonna give it to
special meeting,
Alexander.
cause
Oh,
they
okay.
didn't vote on a couple of
I
things, the
just-
last one.
I just, using modern technology, just took a picture of it.
So, yeah, we'll meet downstairs and we won't Zoom it, or we'll be up here if the planning board's done,
So you're talking about the 30th?
yeah.
Okay, what about this meeting here?
That's
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 tomorrow.
Wednesday, is it? Wednesday.
So who's giving that meeting?
That's Maine Maritime Academy. And that's where you might wanna go to that, because you can mention. What are they planning on doing with their dogs, that's part of the thing on the back of the questions they're looking for people to answer. Through a variation of things, but it says that it's going to be for the. We engage in stakeholder presenting the town of Cassine, the waterfront residential life, student services, blah, blah, hear about the vision, needs and concerns of these groups, so. I think that would be a good time for people to make it from this committee, just to mention, yeah, I think you need to give us or. Start planning on what you're going to do to address, the waterfront itself. Cause I would think they got bigger problems there, but I don't know, like. Some of those buildings gonna be underwater, right? Down there?
You want this one? It has your expert.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I would think in a longer term plan, I would love to have that void between the town dock and Acadia. Pilings and just have that as a whole dock there, cause that's where you get the extra space for whatever the heck's going on, right? But you have to
No,
move
bring
it,
the Katie
straight
here, the
across,
town dog, all
right.
that pieces.
so it's all the way across, and then you can put moorings. On a dock that's lateral there and push everything out further. That's why with this
Well,
wave
if-
attenuating.
all of our dinghies right now are on the inside of the float.
They are, right.
So that wouldn't work.
Well, we'll have to figure out how to put them inside of floats still, cause the floats will be out further, right?
Well, assuming
So
we
you're just
can,
moving everything out.
assuming we can tie up to both sides of the floating breakwater. And then walk across this bridge. That's twice as much tie-up space as we have now, so we can put all the dinghies on the front. And then this is where visiting boaters come in, depending on the size of the boat. If you have a small boat, you can get in behind the little here. Does that make any sense?
Yep.
Yeah. I still wanna know how tall that arch bridge is, 15 feet above the water. And what holds it from point A to B.
Well,
That
what
thing's
happens
bouncing.
when the.
I don't know that,
32
that's another
foot
one,
Boat shears into it.
right? Well, that's. Well, I don't know about that, but that's the whole thing, that's why I almost like the docks, but is that a dead end? And that's why I said, is that enough room to move out?
Well, maybe we don't even need it, maybe we can cut off access to this end and everybody comes and goes through. This side.
Catch a lot of seaweed. Potentially, like.
Always got some.
That's what I learned from you guys, that stuff when you mentioned.
But
it.
if the floats aren't continuously under the docks, then there may be flow through for things like that.
Right, well,
Maybe there's one float in the middle and two smaller bridges.
right, that, yeah, maybe, right, maybe you have like,
And you put two
the two
pilots
docks
there.
come together, but they'll tip up to create a opening. And then they go back down.
That's gonna
But
cost
you,
you a few
yeah,
dollars.
yeah, can.
Cantilever it all.
You get your special button.
I'll leave the arch and
We put a swing,
door.
we put like the swing bridge down in Naples that you
Yeah.
walk in a circle and it spins it open.
The one
And
over
then it
Belfast.
spins it back closed.
Yeah.
Let me-
Like the garage door,
Thank you.